and I will pass over to Sue Phillips to get us going. Sue's the National Inclusion Coordinator, working in the GROW team, and between Sue and Amelia Catt, our Tasmanian Performance Pathways Advisor, they will handle the rest of the night. So hopefully there's some good content and people get some value out of this evening's session. So Sue, over to you.
Thank you, and thank you, Ian. And thank you for everyone for logging on this evening. And this is the fourth webinar in this series that Ian and the GROW team are running this year on a variety of topics. And tonight we'll be looking at inclusive coaching. But before I hand you over to Amelia, we've got lots to cover. Amelia's got some amazing and fantastic content, and we'd like as well to also hear from all of you. So it's going to be quite interactive this evening. If you do have any questions, please can you pop them in the chat, and we'll do a question and answer session at the end. But before I hand over to Amelia, I would just like to briefly talk to you about what Australian Sailing is doing with regard to diversity and inclusion. But firstly, I would also like to acknowledge the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners and custodians of the land and waters that I am speaking to you from today. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of lands and waterways on which you are all coming from today, where you've been working and coaching from today as well. And as we share our knowledge of coaching, I would also like to pay my respects to elders past, present, emerging, and extend that respect to anyone that might be present this evening from Aboriginal and Torres Islander peoples. So next slide, please, Amelia. So Australian Sailing, if you've all seen our strategic plan, our 10-year strategic plan to 2032. Diversity and inclusion is one of our key strategic foundations. And the board is very keen that this year, the next 12 months, that we develop a diversity and inclusion strategy and associated action plans. So it's something that I will be working on and hoping with an external advisory group will help me to develop that strategy and action plans. If you've all seen and read your coaching newsletter that came out yesterday, we are asking for expressions of interest for anyone who's interested in working with myself and Ian and the GROW team in developing this strategy. The nominations form is in the newsletter, so please, if you are interested, put an expression of interest in or know someone that would be really good to help on this area, please put the nomination form in front of them. Yeah, and so last year, as I said, the board approved diversity, equity and inclusion policy for Australian Sailing, which was the first, which is really good. And we developed a template for clubs as well. If they want to develop their own inclusion policy, we're encouraging all clubs to do this, that we have a template that they can adapt to suit their own club and club environment. But whilst we develop the policy and the framework, we know that coaching and instructing goes on and life goes on. And so as part of my sort of role, I've been developing lots of resources and working with external organisations such as AMAZE, which is the Autism Society here in Victoria, where I'm based, and producing some resources and tips and strategies really for instructors and coaches. I'd like to go to the next slide, Amelia, to show you. We have produced sort of tips on communication, but also to ensure that the environment is inclusive as possible and they have the best quality experience for all participants. And as you say, some of the tips around, I mean, a lot of you will know this anyway, but just to be much more mindful as well. If you have someone within your group who that might be on this on the spectrum, that you make sure that you keep your language as clear as possible, you have an even tone of voice, don't use metaphors. I know it sounds silly, but some of these, speak downwind, so ensure that they are able to really understand what you're saying and don't give too much information or too many instructions, but break them down. And wherever possible, demonstrate them, or if you can, use visual cards or diagrams. We've also produced some social scripts for parents and teachers to go through with especially young children before they start sailing. So all these resources we've put on our website and can be found on the instructor resource page on the Australian Sailing website. We've also run some practical training sessions for coaches and instructors working with Blind Sports and Rec Victoria. This was at the recent Training in Focus conference, if anyone was there. Blind Sport and Rec team did a practical session with DSC principals and coaches and instructors. And we're also at the boat shed, you can see one of our instructors, Claire, also, which was quite interesting, put all the instructors in blindfolds and actually sail around some Hansas. Got a few more knocks in the Hansas as they bumped into the island, but it was very good experience for them to really see what it is like with someone who might be blind or have low vision. So we'll be working with Blind Sport and Rec to develop some resources similar to the Amaze ones, which again we'll put on our website so anyone across the country can access those. We're also looking to develop some more toolkits for you as coaches on strategies for, next slide please Amelia, for coaching for girls and mixed groups. Certainly, Amelia will talk about this in more detail about learning names and pronouns and how important it is to ensure that you do use the right pronouns for especially young people. And also just creating a competitive but safe environment, especially for girls, prioritising bravery, not necessarily about winning the race, but taking risks as well. As we know as coaches, using the yet approach. When you have people say to you, I can't do that, we always say, well, you can't do it yet. So some of these little strategies we'll be producing in toolkits, and Jamie, I think at the next webinar, will also be talking a lot more depth about strategies for coaching girls and boys in mixed groups. I will now hand over to Amelia. Amelia will introduce herself, but she is an amazing coach, world champion 470 sailor, and this year has also been named as IAS Thrive with Pride Ambassador. So I'm very pleased to hand over to Amelia, who will talk a bit more in depth about LGBT plus inclusion and sailing.
Thank you so much, Sue. Thanks, Sue. And also we have a page at the end of this whole big presentation, which is all about the resources that you can use in your club. So let's get started. It's going to be high energy. It's going to be high paced, but I have so much confidence that everyone's going to be so able to follow along. We've got a really good deadline at 8 o'clock. So let's hit it. Okay. So before we start, a little bit of a content warning. Some of the stuff that we're going to talk about this evening can be pretty hard hitting, especially when we get some of the statistics around some of our youth. So feel free to take a little break, have a little dip. If that is the case for you and you dip out, just send Sue a little message and just say like, oh, I'm just going to the bathroom or something, so she knows that she doesn't need to follow up on someone going to the bathroom. But we want to make sure that we all remember that you can't pour from an empty cup. All of the coaches and all of the instructors and pretty much everyone who works for Australian Sailing, they're also giving. So remember that you can't pour from an empty cup, and so to look after yourself as well as we go through this. So it's a me. my name is Amelia. You'll also hear me referred to as ACAT. So I have had a situation where someone was like, "Oh, do you know who Amelia is?" And I'm like, "Yes, that's me." They're like, "Oh, I thought your name was ACAT." It's not. It's both. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a retired 470 sailor and former world number 1 in 470. I am an AIS Thrive with Pride ambassador and a Proud to Play ambassador and the Performance Pathways State Advisor for Tasmania. I'm also the Australian 420 Youth Squad coach and the VIS ILCA coach. So I've got lots of jobs. So you'll see me around, I am so sure. So when you see me around at an event, be like, "Yo, ACAT, what's up?" And we'll have a chat. It'll be sick. So, first of all, my why. As you can see, we have the Australian Sailing Team logo there in rainbow colours in the Progress Pride flag. So my why, my reason for giving this presentation, my reason for being an AIS Thrive with Pride ambassador and a Proud to Play ambassador is as a young sailor and as a young person, I knew from an early age that I was gay, but for me, in the environment that I was in, it was easier to not bring my whole self to that environment. I sought the advice from a few older people within AST, and they told me, "Don't do it, mate. Hide it. Don't show it. Just keep that separate to your sailing life, to your sporting life," because in their experience, they hadn't been accepted in their club. They hadn't been accepted within Australian sailing, and they wanted me to go as far as I could in sailing. They felt like it had held them back when people had found out that they were part of the LGBT plus community. And so I did. Held it back for ages. People would say, "Oh, okay, how was your weekend?" And I was like, "Yeah, really good. Just did real straightly things, like, just hanging out." Didn't bring my full self to the club at all. Held back a lot of things. And then when I got engaged to my lovely partner, who I love so much, Jojo, we're getting married in 6 weeks. Can't wait. I was at the club, and my coach at the time, Victor, said to me, and I'm going to impersonate him terribly, so no one pass on this recording, but he said, "Amelia, how was your weekend?" And I was like, "Oh, well, Victor, actually I got engaged on the weekend." And he was like, "Oh, congratulations. Who is the lucky man?" And I had to say to him, "Oh, Victor, actually, it's a woman." And he was like, "Oh." And then his phone rang, and he answered his phone and he walked away. And so I was just sat there being like, "Oh my God, what's happening? Is he going to accept who I am? Is he not? Are we going to be dumped from the squad? Like, what's happening here?" Super, super nervous. I told my teammate, Chris, that I had planned to do this, and he fully supported me. Something was going down with VK, so he actually left the club, and I didn't hear from him. And then on Monday morning, he came up to me, and I was stressing. I'd spent like the last 2 days fully stressing. And he came up to me and he said, "Amelia, Tatiana and I send you our utmost congratulations for your upcoming nuptials," and gave me a big hug. And it was just incredible, like, to be so fully accepted by him and within his position in AST and within Australian sailing. It was life changing. For me, it was life changing. We sailed so much better, like, ever since then. Like, I firmly believe that we would not have been able to become world number 1 if I had hid such a big part of myself from the people who I was spending 50, 60 hours a week with. And so that was huge for me, and it was so good for me. So my reason why is I want to help to create a really welcoming environment for the next generation of people coming through, because through my own experience, I found that it can be super welcoming, And I just had so much more energy, much more time to give to my sailing. And I think I'm only one person. So how many people must there be in your club environment who are holding part of themselves back, not giving everything that they could, not bringing their full selves to your club? So that's my why, and that's my reason for being here tonight. So I'm going to open this up to the floor. What is club sailing all about? Feel free to unmute yourself and yell it out.
Fun.
Fun. Awesome. Fun.
Yes.
What is club sailing about? Love that.
Inclusion.
Fun. Anyone else? What is your club about?
Inclusion.
Inclusion. I love that. What else is someone else's club about?
My club's about family.
Family. I love that. So we have family, fun. This is what club sailing is about, right? We know this. We love this about club sailing. So then we come back to what all of our definitions and how this is going to work into what club sailing is all about. So we're going to go through, what does LGBT plus mean? Just to give a quick rundown so we all have like a common language to talk about. Why is LGBT plus inclusion important? What practical steps can I take? So for you, what can you do at your club practically to help your club be more inclusive? And then we've got some resources. So what does LGBT plus mean? So LGBT plus is just an acronym. It refers collectively to the communities of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. And this refers to gender identity or sexuality. We are going to go into that on the next slide. Difference between gender identity and sexuality. So specifically, sexuality is the individual's sexual and romantic attraction to another person. It's important to note that even though I have 4 examples here on the slide, there's an infinite ways in which someone might define their sexuality. And you might not even know. And they might not ever tell you. So some common ones are heterosexual. So that's a person who is sexually and or romantically attracted to the opposite gender. Bisexual, which is a person who is attracted to people of the same gender and people of another gender. But it's important to note that this doesn't assume that there are only 2 genders. And gay is a term that can be used to identify a man who's sexually or romantically attracted to other people who identify as men, but this can also be used for women. And a lesbian is usually used as a term which for a person who identifies as a woman who is sexually or romantically attracted to people who identify as women. So this is about your or an individual's sexual and romantic attraction to another. So gender identity is the way in which people express their gender. So they can do this through their appearance, through their mannerisms, or through other gender-related characteristics of a person. However, these can get a little tricky. So, for example, I myself, I identify as cisgender. So identify as the same gender to what was assigned to me at birth. So at birth, I was assigned female and I identify as female. But we would say that when in Australia, usually, we don't like to use this word too much, but usually some of our gender-related characteristics can be related to hair. So I'm a cisgender woman who has short hair. So that's where it starts to get a little bit confusing for some people because they have an idea of what is male, what is female, and it can be really hard to know what someone's gender identity is. And someone may not share with you, and it's okay to ask what someone's pronouns are, which can help you to make them feel welcome and help you to refer to them. For example, ACAT she likes to go sailing. But if you didn't know, you could also just say, ACAT likes to go sailing. And then we have our other two terms of gender identity, transgender, which is a general term used to describe a person whose gender identity is different to the sex that they were assigned at birth. And non-binary is a person who does not exclusively identify as a man or a woman. Okay, we have our terms down. So, challenge time. Oh no, I pressed escape instead of slide. Challenge time. So volunteers who are up for a challenge, I'm going to ask for some volunteers, otherwise you'll get voluntold.
Okay.
To tell me about your weekend. Who's going to volunteer for me?
I will.
Who said I will? I love that. I love this
Peter.
involving. Pete,
Peter,
let's
from
go.
Apollo
Let's
Boat.
go, Pete. So the challenge for you is I want you to tell me about your weekend, but I don't want you to use any pronouns. So I don't want you to use anything that refers to the gender identity of the people who you hung out with on the weekend.
Okay, let's go.
Are you up for that?
Totally.
Awesome. Okay, Friday night. Let me know. What'd you get up to Friday night?
What day is it now?
Tuesday. Did you watch the footy? No, that was Saturday.
Yeah, look, I'll just make up the day because I don't know what's going on. My daughters and
Oh,
I.
your children and you?
Okay. Well,
Yep.
okay, go with that. Yep, I'll be correct. Are excitedly preparing for a French exchange student to arrive from France on Friday this week.
That's very exciting. What did your
Indeed.
children do on Saturday? Did you all watch the football?
No, we all painted the house. We all gardened. We all worked together as a lovely group of people, busily and excitedly preparing for our French guest.
That's very exciting. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Pete. What did you do on Sunday night? Did you have a big family dinner?
We had a German woofer stay for a few days. And
A German what?
Woofer, that's someone who stays at farms to have some accommodation.
Oh, nice.
They do
Yep.
4 hours work a day. So that they can have a bed and get a meal. So it's a good way to get around
excellent.
backpacking.
What
Yeah, so they
did
cooked a really
you
fun
cook for your German guest?
Oh, no. The German guest wanted to cook for us. So they got about 8
Oh.
tins of tomato and made this Turkish dish of all things. And we all thought that was lovely. It's
Did all
lovely
of your
cultural
children
exchange.
like the food?
Everyone except me had an egg boiled in a mass of tomatoes, which I just found a bit gross.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so
So-
much, Pete.
Yeah, I think it's interesting not telling you the gender of the French exchange student or the gender of the woofer from Germany.
How much, if you thinking about your thinking, how much
Yep.
energy did you have to put into not talking about the gender identity of any of the people on your weekend?
Not that much. I was observing myself,
Mhm.
being a little bit nervous to this room. I can't see I'm on a mobile phone, so I don't know how many people are in the room. But I was interested that you called it out on daughters, because daughters are gender specific, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess that is an example, and thank you so much, Pete. You did such a great job. Snaps for Pete,
Oh, thank you.
everyone. The
Can't hear you all.
observation- Oh yeah, you can't hear you. Come on, guys. The observation of yourself of making sure that you're not accidentally revealing the gender identity of someone. That's an example of the mental load that lots of people in the LGBT plus community do every day. So they might not feel comfortable to reveal the gender identity of their partner, of a friend who they hung out with, of where they went. So by creating really inclusive environments, we take away some of that mental load. So thank you so much, Pete.
A question for you, do you think it's necessary that language, and here comes our French exchange student, I think French is the most genderfied language I've ever come across, but we don't need it in English. We don't need he and she. We can just use they and non-genderfy all of it.
Yeah.
That's a possibility.
Absolutely.
We could retrain the way we speak to be gender neutral.
We could.
And
That's
in working
awesome.
with young people, it's probably a really valued thing to do, particularly for sensitive people who are, going through a bit of identity uncertainty. It does make a
Definitely.
massive difference to them.
Definitely.
But that's a bigger challenge than this challenge time would now enable.
It is
It's an
tricky,
idea
but
anyway.
thank you so much for pointing it out, Pete. That's great. Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
for letting
being
me play.
a great volunteer. Okay. So we've touched on it a little bit, but why is LGBT plus inclusion so important? So I'm gonna hit you with some stats. In 2019, there was a big study done on all of the people in Australia who are involved in sport and on people who are LGBT plus identifying. And we've got some pretty intense statistics popping up on the screen here. So in youth sport, so that's classed as under 22, most gay people do play sports. However, 73% of them believe that team sport is not safe for gay people. 73%. That's huge. 80% believe that not all gay people are not at all accepted a little, or only moderately accepted in sporting culture. 80%. And of those who've been targeted, we have some pretty high statistics about verbal slurs and also about being physically assaulted. So 20%, so 1 in 5 gay men and 9% of lesbians. That is incredibly high. So if we can make our spaces safe and inclusive, some things that we're going to do. We are going to have a better community because people are going to be able to bring their full selves to the yacht club. We are going to retain members who we might otherwise lose. And the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to create our sport, which we all know can be incredibly inclusive. Just look at the number of different classes that we've got across all the clubs. We can be that inclusive sport. We can create an environment where LGBT plus people are accepted, where they do feel like it is safe. But this is the current state of play. This is why having this conversation and everyone who's turned up today are showing that you guys are all committed to creating an environment that is safe and inclusive. And here are the facts on the current state of play where it sits. This is why it's so important to be inclusive and to have these discussions. So we're going to be interactive. We're going to do some breakout rooms. The lovely Sue is going to create them for us. And what I would like you to discuss in your breakout groups is think of a time and share a time a coach or a teacher said something either really positive or really negative to you as a child. And I don't think we have very many people who are still at school on the call. So this is going to be some impactful stuff. What I would like you to talk about in your group is how did it make you feel at the time? And then, given the passage of time, how does it make you feel now? So you're going to have 5 minutes in your group to think about something, a time that a coach or a teacher said something positive or negative to you as a child, and how it made you feel at the time and how it makes you feel now. So Sue, I'll hand over to you to create our breakout rooms, and I will see all of you in 5 minutes. Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming back. So, having nominated our speaker in our group.
Oh, have we?
Absolutely, of course. I would have thought you would have read the instructions, Fee.
I was talking too much.
What were some conclusions that you came to from your group? How did it make people in your group, you can de-identify it, how did it make them feel at the time? And how did it make you feel now? I'm going to switch back over. Hopefully you can still see my screen. I'm going to voluntold some speakers if you haven't organised your speakers yourselves. Dan, who was in your group?
We had Drew and Camille and one
Amazing. Are you the speaker, the nominated speaker for your group?
Looks like it. So to be honest with you, nothing particularly came to mind for anyone, but there was a related, I suppose, session at USAL Queensland in Yeppoon. We were doing some professional development, and there was a discussion around how we can have conversations with young athletes around body size, etc., and how that can be managed in a better way than it may have been in the past. And also that it's not just at a lower level. There was discussion around, one of the, HP athletes actually not having potentially a very healthy relationship with food and not understanding the requirements of their sport and what they need calorifically wise, etc., and potentially changing their body
composition.
Yeah, that composition, exactly. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Excellent. That's great. It sounds like you had a really good chat. So learning about how impactful those conversations or even comments can be, and the long-lasting effects. Trinity, who was in your group? And now's your chance also to dob in your nominated speaker.
We didn't nominate anyone because we were too busy chatting as well. I had Sarah and Peter, who spoke before, and myself. And I suppose our conclusion was pretty basic. The negative can just have a really discouraging effect on where you might go. But the positive can just encourage you to work harder and, give you the energy to continue going down your path of your dreams, even if, you don't end up where you want, but you can get a bit further.
Definitely. Thank you so much for sharing. Who can I pick on next? Matt. Who was in your group, Matt? And who was your nominated speaker?
I was by myself because I got lost in the ether there somewhere.
Oh no! Poor Matt.
I'll share something.
Yes.
When I was a very young teenager, a teacher commented that I'd developed some good metalworking skills, and that comment has stuck with me all my life.
That's so lovely.
I can see how things can be very negative for people, but when they're positive, they can be very, very empowering.
Definitely. Thank you so much for sharing that lovely story, Matt. So for me, the big conclusions that come from thinking about this myself and for all of you sharing are that we as club coaches and as people working within the system can make amazing amazing inroads to inclusion and have huge impacts, just like that teacher did on Matt, have huge impacts on an individual's life with just a comment. Isn't that incredible? We don't have to be experts on inclusion, but we can say something that can buoy someone and lift them up for the rest of their life. You can do that. Incredible. So as we go through, we're going to talk about some situations, talk about some practical steps that you can take, and how amazing would it be if you had the same impact, if you were that person, if you were that teacher that said that thing to Matt when he was just a kid. Wouldn't that be amazing? So what is the impacts of making LGBT plus people feel safe? So we've talked about this, but we're going to go over it again. We have retention of members. This is going to make your clubs grow and your clubs be really strong in their memberships. We have performance outcomes. I know from myself that when I was able to bring my whole self to my sailing, in terms of my performance, skyrocketed. Amazing. And we have a positive impact and a positive real impact that you can make today or probably tomorrow on someone that will impact them for the rest of their lives, and the ripple effect is on societies. We can do this. Like, we can make a real impact here and make LGBT plus people feel safe in our sailing clubs. So we've talked about it, we've thought about it. What practical steps can I take as a club coach to make people in my club feel safe, feel included? So we've got four main steps to take: language, behaviours, events, and education. Oh no, my clicky. Okay, so time to put our thinking caps on. What practical steps could I take, so you as an individual take, at your club in my behaviours and my language? You're going to go into your breakout rooms. You have 3 minutes to discuss in your groups, and don't forget to nominate a speaker to share to the larger group.
I was in conversation.
That
I was deep in conversation.
That doesn't sound like you, Fee.
No.
Sorry. It was only 3 minutes.
Maybe you could start us off. Who's your nominated speaker?
Yes. It's me.
Oh.
Okay. We had really good conversation about the type of language that we use, and we came up with the term "hi guys." Now, for me, that I don't have guys means everybody, but for some people it might directly mean that it's a male. So using the language, thinking about how we use that language and changing it, instead of saying "hi guys," it's "hi everyone," or "hi,"
squad.
I don't know another way of doing it. Hi,
squad,
sailors.
Team, sailors.
Yeah. So thinking about that aspect. I also said maybe at the beginning, if it was, say, at the beginning of attackers or a coaching clinic, introducing yourself and maybe using your pronouns, just to get that feeling of inclusion and comfortable language happening, and then sharing. Would anyone else like to share a couple of sentences about themselves, just to get, again, that understanding that how we use our language?
For sure. Thanks so much, Fee. I think definitely for when we look at the feedback from families with transgender children, and I do mean children, like 12 years old and under, they are hypersensitive to the language that is used by people who are like front facing, so by the coaches, by the instructors, by the admin, and so making an effort to use those really nice inclusive terms we'll encourage them to come to our club and we'll help them to feel really safe. So that sounds like a really good discussion. Thanks, Fee. Dan, you got your hand up?
I certainly do. I'd like to share, if that's okay.
Yeah.
A situation at my club. So there's a sailor at my club. They are 13. They are, well, have now transitioned from one gender to another. And I was, the father of the sailor said to me, they like to be referred to as A now. Their previous name started with A, and I didn't grasp the importance of that at the time. So I was like, oh, that's a nice nickname, but you know, I need to be able to address people on the water and get their attention and this. So it was right at the end of the season when this occurred, and at the beginning of just prior to the start of the season a couple of weeks ago, we were actually given the directive that that individual now likes to be referred to as A, and they've now moved forwards and gone to a different name. But yeah, I just thought it was really, like, I just totally missed it, just straight above my head. Did not cotton on to what was going on at all. So just something to share with the group there.
Thank you so much for sharing, Dan. That sounds like you handled it quite well. I think that we as especially as club coaches, you might only see your sailors once a week.
Correct.
Maybe 3 times a month, because, you know, there's a birthday party, there's a soccer tournament. But it sounds like you were super receptive and really open to being like, okay, this sailor wants to be referred to by this name. That's fine. That's all good.
And I've been lucky to be guided by the parents with what pronouns they like as well. I don't think at that stage the sailor was 100% sure what pronoun they wanted to use, but yeah. So yeah, at least I'm getting some guidance from the parents there, and I think it was just strange that the parent is quite a straightforward individual, but around that he was not straightforward. It wasn't, okay, this sailor now wants to be referred to as A because XYZ. It was sort of alluded to, but not direct.
Yeah, I think I can probably help to shed some light on that. I think it can be, I know for myself, it can be sometimes like exhausting sharing that the fact that my partner is female, and sometimes I don't bother correcting people. My partner's name is Joe, which, you know, could be a male name or a female name.
Yeah.
And sometimes people refer to Joe as she's also a doctor, so got a bit of, you know, cultural baggage with a person called Joe who is a doctor. People assume that she's a he. And some days I'm just like, sure.
Exhausting.
Yeah, you know what? Whatever. That's
Yeah.
fine. I can cop this because I don't have the energy to explain fully about that. And also, like, you don't want to make people feel uncomfortable either.
Yeah.
So, but it sounds like you handled it really well. So nice work, Dan. Sarah, who was in your group? Would you like to, and who was your spokesperson from your group?
Hello, Amelia. We've lost the video of you, so
Oh no.
We're enjoying seeing your profile. But I had Pete and Trinity, and they've kindly nominated me this time as the speaker. We chatted about sort of physical sort of posters or stickers or information around the club that can help the club. And we also chatted about you know, having empathy and appreciating that we're all different, and having a safe place, a safe club that has empathy. So they were the things that we chatted about.
Excellent. Thank you so much. They're definitely really good things to do. So we've chatted through some practical steps that we could take, some behaviours putting up some signs, some language. Dan shared a really encouraging story with us about how he took on board a sailor's new name. This is amazing. So what we can do, we can educate ourselves. That's one of the ways that we can help our clubs to be more inclusive. So here on the screen, if you'd like to screenshot, pen and paper, however you want to do it, I have put some resources for you in video format. So all of these are some really good videos. So the first one, Gay Be Baby, is a documentary about homosexual families through like the lens of a child, and it's also around the time of the non-binding postal vote around marriage equality. Queer Australia is and again another documentary, but it's with a slight comedic twist. It's all about the long history of gay people in Australia. And then very recently, Four Corners put out an investigative report about the AFL's Last Taboo, which is all about their lack of out gay male players. So there apparently are gay players in the AFL, but they're not out basically because of the fans, because they are shocking and not supportive. I think we look at some of the way that some of our Indigenous players have been treated on the field, and to me it's not unsurprising that there are no out players in the AFL. And then The Dream Life of Georgie Stone, which is about how one girl changed Australian law for trans children. So you used to have to go to a judge. It was a whole process through the courts for children to access gender affirming care, and it is incredible. All of these are quite easy watches, I would say. Like they're not super on the details in terms of facts and statistics, but they're a nice way to grow your understanding of LGBT people within Australia. So all of these are about Australian families, which I think is really important, because they're the people who are going to be turning up to your clubs. Another way that you can educate yourselves, is it going to load? Exciting / terrifying. Loading. Is and I'm going to play it for you now. It's the intro is a program called Allianz Coach for All. So they have partnered with Pride in Sport to create a program, and I'm going to play it for you because I feel like I'm going to repeat everything that Ben says in his intro.
ACAT.
Yeah.
ACAT.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you saw the bit, but so yesterday when I sent the meeting link out to everybody, you did all get a link to complete the training as well for Coach for All. So hopefully, if you haven't already done it, it'd be awesome if you do go away after this session some point in your own time this week and complete the training.
And then you can add it. The training is super easy. Let's watch the video so I don't repeat myself when it presses play.
The locker room should be a second home for every athlete. But 73% of LGBTQ youth don't feel safe playing team sport. Often this is because of homophobic slurs or bullying. This causes increased dropout rates and mental health issues.
As coaches, we have the unique power to change this culture.
As believers in the power of sport and the importance of inclusive spaces, Allianz has teamed up with Pride in Sport to create a new coaching program,
where we take an honest look at the problem and learn how to change things from the locker room out.
I would like my environment, being as a coach and the team and the club that I work for, to be a safe place, a really inclusive place, but not just through our beliefs, but through our language and the way that we interact every day. And then we do have athletes that are comfortable to walk in to the locker room, play the sport that they love, but also thrive both on the field and off the field in being simply who they are and who they want to be.
I want a whole state of Trent Robinsons who are recognising the power that they hold as coaches to set that standard. Coaches in every sport at every level across all of our communities have opportunities to have these really significant little moments every week, every training, every game. And that's one of the reasons I'm really excited about this program, is because we're going to be equipping those coaches with the skills that they need to make a real difference in their teams.
This course will give you coaching skills you didn't know you needed.
What should a coach do if they hear a slur or a joke?
There's only one rule, and that is don't do nothing.
Players don't understand how harmful these messages can be.
There's a real cost to being told that what you are is less, is evil. This is really, really important work that you're doing right now.
So, as we all saw, an incredible program. It goes for about 25 minutes, and it asks all the questions that you might feel uncomfortable to ask, that you might feel like, oh, I'm not sure if it's appropriate for me to say this. I look at it, I have done the course, and when I did it, I was like, oh, if only my coach from when I was a kid had done this course, it would have made a world of difference. And you can all put it on your LinkedIn and make yourself look like incredible coaches. And in terms of for your club and what your club can do to be inclusive, because it is a program that is very digestible for all ages, you could show this to your instructors all the way up to your board members and get them to all complete the program. I think education is a key part of making clubs inclusive, and if we are to be truly inclusive in our language, in our behaviours and in our spaces, we do need to have that educational backing, so we're not just rainbow washing. We've got to do the work behind it. I would also like to note that it is now 8:05, and I said that we'd only go through till 8. So if you do need to dip out now, please do, because I know that you all have rich and varied lives as well. And I promise that I will not be offended if you need to dip out now. Ian has told me that I'm only allowed to push out till 8:10. So if you do have the capacity to stick around, we're only going to go for another 10 minutes, but something for you all to think about. So, language. Fee touched on this a little bit before when she shared her group's discussion. I think it's important that we get some ideas of what to say, because it is hard to know. So I think that's some important things to think about when you are addressing groups. So in terms of inclusivity, you put the person first. So we have a person who uses a wheelchair, a person who has a disability, that kind of thing. In terms, we always go for person first language, because they are people first. They're not defined by any other things. A person who is gluten-free, for example, not a gluten-free person. Trying to stick to gender neutral terms. So sailors, hey, sailors, young sailors, buddy, they, champion. If you're not sure, it's also okay to ask. An example of what that could look like would be, say, oh, Ian, if it's okay, could you tell me how you'd like to be referred to? Would you like to be referred to as he, him? I really like she, her. What do you like to be? What do you like to use? And it's also important that you do have a try. It can feel really overwhelming, and this is something that I know holds a lot of people back. They really don't want to make a mistake. They want to be super inclusive, and so they think like, oh, I'll just avoid it. I'll just avoid it. But it's okay to have a try. and to be really inclusive. If you do make a mistake, just apologize. I have trans friends, and when I do accidentally refer to them as their dead name because I've known them for 20 years, I just say, oh, sorry, correct myself, use their new name, and then just move on. In terms of listen up, boys and girls, you could say listen up, sailors, listen up, Opti Green Fleet, listen up, coaching staff, because as Fee touched on before, saying hi guys can not feel as inclusive to some people. So, events and social media. It's super exciting to see for me, it was very, very exciting to see Australian Sailing and AST go to the Progress Pride flag for Pride Month. But they were able to do that because they started with education. They have educated their staff. Sue is doing some amazing work in inclusion. So it's really important that if you are to put rainbow logos on your website or at your events, that you do start with your education, because we would hate, and I'm sure all of you would absolutely hate, someone to come into your space thinking that it was really inclusive and not have that inclusive experience. So be aware of rainbow washing and to start with education. And then also giving back to the community through charity. For example, Proud to Play, of which, disclaimer, I am an ambassador, is a really important part of creating these safe spaces, because they allow those organisations to run events for LGBT people. Because as we know, as a marginalised group, they often have difficulties with access to resources. So Proud to Play and other charities do a lot of work to provide opportunities for sport. So something to keep in mind when you're running your inclusion events, your Pride events, and your social media. Okay. The group thing. We got 3 minutes. We're going to hustle. Imagine you are coaching an ILCA 4 and ILCA 6 group. Brainstorm some language that you could use to refer to your group as a whole and some individuals. You're going to have 3 minutes. We're going to nominate a speaker. It's going to be wonderful. Sue, you got this? Excellent. Okay, Kingsley, what were some things that your group have? Well, first of all, are you the nominated speaker? And if you're not, are you still happy to speak? What were some things?
Yeah,
that
still
your
happy to
group,
speak.
That
We
your
actually
group came up with?
we nominated Erin. She was the one that put her hand up.
Erin,
I'm happy to speak. I'm happy to speak.
Go for it, Erin.
Excellent, Erin.
We came up with a few terms: squad, team, athletes, everyone, and yeah, we just talked about a few things. Yeah, saying hi guys is a habit. For me, I say hi ladies a lot because I went to an all-girls school. I'm trying to break out of that habit. But yeah, just neutral terms. It's always a good one.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Erin. What about Camille? Who was in your group, Camille? Are you the speaker? Oof.
Oh, I guess so. Dan's done it a couple of times. Yeah, it was just Dan and I. I don't know, we just figured as like groups, you just call them by the boat class. Like if you want to talk to all the 4-7s or the radials together, sorry, ILCA 4s or 6s together, just say, you guys come over here, ILCA 6s over there. But if you want to talk to them as individuals and you don't know their names or pronouns, boat names is always a go-to.
Yep. Nice.
So that's just an idea. Or sale numbers if you're feeling desperate.
I love that. I love that. Did anyone else have any they'd like to share? Especially for some individuals, if you maybe if you don't know their name.
Yeah, well, we talked about all those muscles and champion and all this sort of stuff, as you suggested, Amelia.
Nice.
And, Sarah and I also talked about the idea of when you're developing the group and the you know, the rules of engagement and how they want to be valued and addressed. They often come up with their own name or a theme song. So they often use that name to help them, that they all chose that name to work together in.
Oh, that's lovely.
whole
Promote
group.
a bit of group bonding. I love that.
Yeah,
That's great.
ownership. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But
Excellent.
I do feel nervous when I'm not familiar with who's in the group and how they're rolling. Well, I want to make sure I call them the right thing.
Absolutely.
Because it's, you know, people, like you said, kids under 12, they're super sensitive. People who identify or have questions about this business, which is probably a lot of them, are very sensitive about how they're addressed and how the language goes.
And also hyper aware as well.
Yeah, increasingly.
Yeah.
So
Thank you
for
so
us
much,
50
everyone.
For us 50-year-olds, it's a lot of people my age don't even go near the conversation. Just want to run.
Yeah, it can be really intimidating. So it's so awesome to see you all on the call, taking that brave step.
The big challenge, Amelia, in the club, and I suppose it's a white elephant here, is that the people who aren't in the call, and the people in my club, that, you know, they're typically older males, not very sensitive.
No, that's a great point to bring up, and we have a Q&A. We're just going to go through our last slide because I've gone over time. Don't tell Ian, I'm 2 minutes over. So we have one more slide to do, and then we're going to do a question and answer. And I know that some of you will have some questions, and I know that some of you will have other things to do, chores, children, you know, NCIS, all equally important to get to. So we'll do our resources and then we'll come back to that. Excellent. Okay. Pew. So here are some resources. The lovely Ian and Sue are going to send all of these out. All of these websites can show you some we've got our inclusive language guide, our checklist for clubs, and Pride in Sport have some resources about what you can do, some practical things that you can do, some language that you can take, some skills that you can use around LGBT plus inclusion and how to be an LGBT plus ally as well. So the key thing is you don't have to go at this alone. There are heaps of resources out there that you can tap into to really expand your knowledge. This is the official end of the presentation. So feel free. Thank you so much for coming. We're going to do some question and answers next, which could blow out. But thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I'm so glad to see you all here. And I think you're all going to take some really positive learnings back into your club environments. And wouldn't it be great if you were that amazing person who said something incredible to a sailor tomorrow or on the weekend when you meet with your club, and they are so buoyed by it that they think about it for 40 years, like Matt did. Wouldn't that be lovely? So thank you so much. We're going to get into our questions, our totally not scripted questions, and questions from the group. See you, Dan. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing.
Amelia, do you want to just as well, I think there's one slide that just does some further support and help if you do have someone, especially a youngster, come to you and confides in you and they are sort of looking to you for help and support as well. We've sort of listed as well some organisations that help for young people particularly, but also for anyone. Headspace is very good for young people, but Q Life and Reach Out are also really good resources as well to direct people to as well if you feel that you're not able to give them that support or advice that they might need. We'll send this out, as we say.
And yeah, we're going to send it out, and you can also screenshot it as well right now. If I do this, can you still see that slide or not? You can? Oh, amazing. I love that. So some totally not scripted, or some questions from the group. Pete, would you like to start?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak about the question from the group. My sailing club is lovely and it's renowned for its lovely, welcoming inclusion amongst the type of people that turn up to the sailing club. There are lots of other people who might come to the sailing club, particularly children, who don't necessarily feel that comfortable around the drinking and the male, typical larrikin like carry on, eating meats. Another thing that can be pretty big down there. I do struggle to want to sort of make inroads with this issue with the group, and I wonder if you've got any suggestions around that, any success stories, clubs that have grown beyond their traditional 2 o'clock races.
I think the first thing to recognise is this is an issue that not only sailing clubs face, but sporting clubs across the country. We're going through at the moment a period of incredible change, especially in regards to LGBT plus inclusion. People forget that it was not that long ago that the Prime Minister said, "Oh, I can't make a decision about this. If we should have marriage equality, it's too hard. We can't do this. You all need to tell us what you think." And marriage equality only got about 60% of the vote in the non-binding postal plebiscite. So what that means in practical terms is that 1 in 3 people at the time believed that marriage was between a man and a woman, to the exclusion of all others. So they're probably not going to be invited to my wedding in 6 weeks' time. The other thing that's really important to know is that people do have these opinions and these beliefs. Some of them are really strongly held religious beliefs. And what we're asking is, we're not asking people to change their beliefs. It's hard to change a belief for 50 years. Super hard, 60 years. But what we are asking people to do is we are asking for minimum standards of behaviour. So we're not asking you to come to ACAT's wedding and to wear rainbow eyeshadow and to throw rainbow confetti. But we are asking that when you see ACAT or when you're at the yacht club, you don't use homophobic language. That's what we're asking of you. We're asking that your behaviours are of a minimum standard. And that's what we're asking, because it's hard to change those people's beliefs. And I think you could spend a lifetime trying to change one person's belief systems.
And I think, Pete, some of those sort of changes is very much a cultural issue that needs to be driven by the management of the club. It's like, I guess you accept what you walk past. Is that the saying?
Yeah, the standard that you walk past is the standard you accept.
There we go. Thanks, ACAT. I knew there was I was close. So I think it needs to be brought up at a management level around codes of conduct and just acceptable behaviour that is a minimum standard in current society. And I think all of us as coaches, we've got a really good opportunity to just pick up when people say things out of, like, you have to be quite brave, but I think as a coach, you've got to be quite brave anyway to be a good coach.
Well, like Ben said in the short video we watched, the only rule is don't do nothing.
Yep. Yeah, that's my sort of thought. Like, everyone that's in this room has probably coached teenage boys, and teenage boys say some stuff to each other that is not appropriate. They don't mean it, and they don't think about, like, they're not meaning to be hurtful, but it can be hurtful to somebody. Like a prime example is, I told Sue this earlier, I heard some boys, it wasn't coaching, it was actually they were walking to school. I was walking my dog this morning, bunch of lads messing around with each other, just walking on their way to school. And I heard one of them say to their mate in the group, "Oh, that's so gay." And I've heard that at clubs with kids I've been coaching, like teenage boys. It's standard practice for them. We need to be picking that up, I feel, as coaches, and just sort of saying, "Come on, mate, that's not right, is it? Think about what you're saying, or what's your language?" No different to you would if you heard them swearing. So yeah, that's my sort of take.
Yeah, and definitely you can.
Did you call them out, Ian? Did you call the kids out this morning with a dog?
Yeah, I did.
Did you?
Yeah. So I
How'd they
literally I walked straight through the middle of them, and I just looked at them and went, "Come on." And they looked as if to say, "Oh shit, this old guy's just told us off."
Yeah. Oh, good. Well done.
And it's literally, and that's sort of like, you don't have to obviously strip them down in public and tear them to pieces. It's making them realise that what they've said isn't right.
And it can be something that I really took. My teammate Chris was really good at this. When he would hear people say homophobic things, he would just say, "Oh, we don't say that anymore." And that's all. That's all he'd say. He'd leave it at that. But it was as simple as, "We don't say that anymore." And after a couple of times of saying that, he would say, "Oh, you've said this. Dude, what do you mean? Because to me, that's what that means. Do you mean that?" And I was talking to a group the other day, and they said one of the things that holds them back from speaking up in a group is they feel like they weren't confident enough to speak up in the group. But what you can do if you're feeling like you're not confident enough to call that person out is you can say to people around you, like, "Oh, I felt that was disgusting when that person said that. Like, I'd hate for that to happen." You don't have to directly, if you're not feeling confident enough to say to that person, like, "That's not on, that's not how we speak." You can say to the other people once that person has left, like, "Oh, that was awful. I'd hate for people to feel not included. I would never use that language." Because having been on the receiving end of it, even having people be like, "Oh, I would never use it." At the time I was like, okay, that's a safe person. For me, that's a safe person to be around. That other person's already shown me they're not safe. But this person, even though they weren't able to speak up in the moment, they've shown me that they're
shared their values. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Felicity's put a good thing in the chat as well about having the code of conduct for the club displayed publicly somewhere in the clubhouse, but also any new members making sure that they tick that they've signed, that they've read the code of conduct and signed it, and also when they do member renewal as well, just to say a tick box in the registration form, yeah, we've read the code of conduct and we signed and will agree to those standards and behaviours.
Yeah, good idea.